Technology is the most powerful change in the world of education.
Everything changes.
Welcome to the Emerging Technologies in Education podcast, delivered to you by Clever Books Company.
Hello, listeners. Hello, everyone. We're continuing our podcast series, Immersive Technologies in Education. And today we have a guest speaker, David. Hello, David.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us. David, can you briefly introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I guess my real title is Innovation Pioneer. I work for the Rehab Group. But if anyone doesn't know what an innovation pioneer is, that's fine, because I guess I don't either. But enhance the lives of people who use our services. So that's my real job. And then apart from that, I'm working as an educator, and I also have my own community, and we focus around creating a culture of entrepreneurship in the educational technology area in Dublin.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And David, you're here today to share your experience and your opinion about immersive technologies. Is there any specific focus you would like to go with?
Yes, I'd like to have a look at how it can be used in a classroom from an adult education setting, and also working with young adults with disabilities and autism, and then also trying to look at how entrepreneurs and people who are developing these technologies can improve on their designs and improve on the experience by co-designing with the people that are going to use their products.
Okay, and is there any particular case study you would like to share about specific technologies used, for example, to work with kids with special needs?
I don't want to focus on anything in particular, but maybe I'll share some of my own experiences of working with some virtual reality in the classroom.
Oh, sounds very interesting. Well, I'll let you explain a little bit more about that, and will be great to hear your experience and your opinion, and also the challenges probably that the schools are facing, educators are facing in bringing immersive technologies to the classroom, and also the positive benefits for the kids.
Absolutely. I suppose the best way to give you a bit of context is to tell you a little bit about the classroom that I was working in recently. And we were working with young adults. They were from 18 upwards, maybe to 21, and each one had a mild learning difficulty. And what we started to do is we started to look at ways that we could enhance their experiences in the classroom. And of course, the usual hot topics of augmented reality and virtual reality come up naturally. And we decided that they were already using some virtual reality at home. So we decided, well, why not try and bring it into the classroom and see what we can do to improve our own lessons and to enhance them. So we started very small, and we started with your typical Google Cardboard, which is I think maybe a $5 or something like that online. Mm-hmm. And very, very simple. Just uses your mobile phone and uses the apps on that and creates a virtual reality experience when it's held up to your eyes. And it was incredible watching the transformation that happened in the classroom, because immediately everybody engaged with what we were showing them. We used very, very simple things at the start because we obviously wanted to test and see these products were worthwhile and if there was engagement there. So we started off with the usual simple apps of you're on a roller coaster, you're experiencing something new, and we had people immerse themselves into these environments, which I guess is quite standard. And what we found was that the young adults we were working with seemed to connect quite a lot with what we were showing them, and became quite interested in learning a little bit more and kind of pushing the boundaries of what they were experiencing. So at that point, we started to connect a little bit more into some of the Google products that are available. We connected in with the Google Expeditions, and what that does is it provides you with lesson plans and lesson structures, learning outcomes around different places that you can go and visit around the world, or go back and learn about history and things like that, which was really exciting. And from that, what we noticed was that, and it was kind of an interesting thing, was that those students that we were working with who had never experienced it before, they were going home, they were buying their own virtual reality products, and they were coming into us the next day or in a week or so's time and telling us about what they were learning at home and what they were doing with their virtual reality headsets, which we found was quite interesting in terms of people starting to learn and find their own interests, which is a big part of what the course was about. The course that I was teaching was all about independency and finding your own path and creating your own way of doing things, which was really exciting. And I guess for myself as an educator in a classroom, whenever you find something that creates this excitement, it's always very fun. It's always very exciting for me as an educator as well. But then it's about finding some kind of focus for that and structure, and starting to allow a kind of can actually start to create a little bit of their own with it, not just use the technology, but start to create their own lessons around this and structures. So what we did was we started to take some photos and put them into the VR headset. So just an easy photo on your phone, maybe of the classroom, maybe of the area around it. And then the students then put them into the VR apps, and then we're able to create their own virtual reality experiences, which added an extra level onto not just using the technology that people are giving them, but actually starting to be involved in the creation of new things as well, which I suppose is what really we're all striving to do.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing how the kids actually can engage and find their own interests in such immersive technologies like VR and AR.
Yes, absolutely. It's an area that allows such an amazing opportunity for everybody to follow things. You know, you can stand on the moon if you want to stand on the moon, and you can have a look around and you can experience the first moon landing if that's what you want. You can be underwater. You can learn things in a way it's very immersive. That you start to become. You almost start to forget that you're in your classroom, and you become really engaged with the topic that you're seeing in front of your eyes and that you're engaging with. And I think that adds an extra element to all education in terms of retention and being able to relate to the topics that you're teaching in a classroom. If you can put somebody in there in a space where you can actually see and interact with things, you add an extra level to the lesson. And I think from that you're going to get better outcomes, and people are going to get a better sense of what it's all about. And I think that's a key to it. And I think that's why I like it as a excuse me, as an educator, is that these immersive technologies, they build on what we're already doing. We don't have to change too much in terms of the educational structure of the classrooms and things like that. But everyone can experience the same thing at the same time, rather than just reading it from a book, which for me personally, I found probably one of the least efficient ways for me to learn was reading through a book. But if you put me somewhere, I'm going to remember that a lot quicker. And I think that's the key for a lot of people, and especially in the area that I was working with these young adults with learning difficulties, that if you can provide this immersive experience that provides visual visual stimulation, you're getting the audio through it as well, that there's a lot more likelihood that they're going to retain what you're showing them, as opposed to reading it through a book, or just doing things through text, which I find it doesn't work, and it will to a certain extent, but on the overall scheme of things, if you can provide things that they can immerse themselves in and learn from all their different senses, then it automatically improves the retention and what their learning is.
Mm-hmm. It's just another way to present the same content, and as a supplementary to already existing school tools and aids.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what you guys through Clever Books are trying to do as well, is try to build on what's already there, and provide a way that people can learn in a more engaged manner, and I guess a more fun way of doing things, which I think is always a key element to anything in the classroom. If you're having fun, and if your students are having fun, well, then the learning comes a little bit more naturally, and the topics and engagements and the discussions that follow on after you've had these experiences are kind of the real kind of deep learning that happens around the topics, and not just in the experience itself, but when you sit down with your students and you get them to work with each other and talk to each other and then feedback about their experiences, you start to realize that there's so much more that you can start to delve into and to pull out and get people's different interests and bring them together. And again, one of the things that we try to do afterwards is that each of our students, or as pairs, or maybe individually, depending on their comfort level, would teach a class based on what they've experienced, and maybe pick a topic within that, such as maybe the history of a certain area, and then they actually teach the class themselves, which we found to be really, really fun, but also very beneficial in terms of understanding and comprehension of certain topics, and to build up skills around advocacy, and even just simple things such as speaking in public and being able to present and communicate your ideas. So that's one of the things that we found to be really, really interesting after the experience, that we would have people teach their own classes, which could take a couple of weeks, depending on how the topic was developing for them. But they would also create their own lesson plans and structures around it, and their slideshows, and they would create their own experience of virtual reality as well, that they would be able to present to the class, that the class could experience. So it started this kind of cycle of experience, reflection, and then creating more experiences, and that design of their own experience, I think, was a lot of fun, and really, really interesting to see the ownership that they took of these topics.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I guess children have different ways of learning, and again, these different immersive technologies provides the opportunity for certain kids who have maybe stronger visual abilities to retain and accept the content, to learn more from use of augmented or virtual reality.
Yeah, and I think everybody's so different, you know. If you sit two people down and tell them to learn about a topic, they'll probably start to learn in different ways. And if you put 50 people in the classroom, then generally you're going to have people who are learning in so many multiple different ways. And what virtual reality and augmented reality do is that they provide an opportunity to learn in a number of different ways, which is always a good thing. And I think that's the key to any good educator, is that you provide opportunities for the people in your classroom to learn in a way that is beneficial for them and is most beneficial for them. And that can be the challenge as an educator, but at the same time, we can use these tools to our benefit, And if you use them, like you said, as a supplement and to augment what you're already doing, well, then what you're doing is creating this environment where everybody has the opportunity to learn at a kind of an optimum level. And that's what's very exciting about it. And obviously, we're kind of at early stages, and so many educators are taking these technologies on and they're bringing them into their classrooms, and they're trialing and they're testing and they're sharing on social media, which I think is wonderful. I think it's really exciting. But we're only at the very start, and the technologies can be a little bit expensive at times. So I suppose a lot of people, and myself included, are limited to what we can do at the moment. Where we're trying to do the best we can with the kind of, I suppose, cheaper technologies, that we can bring them in and make them available to as many people as possible. But as these become more mainstream, we start to see the prices start to drop down a little bit, which I think will be good for education in the long run. But that's why, if we can share what we're doing now and learn from that, that we'll be ready when the technologies are more advanced and more readily available at a higher standard, which I think is going to be very exciting to see. And especially for augmented reality, where things are developing quite fast, and you can see the difference even in the last 2 to 3 years in terms of the quality of what's being provided and what's available. That's really, really fun to see. And I remember even it must be, I think, 2 or 3 years ago now, and we had the hottest day of the year, and we were trying to figure out, we're having a discussion around it, and we said to the class, what are the things that we need to be thinking about when we have these hot days? And they were saying, well, look, water is obviously very, very important. And what we had were printed elements on little cubes we'd made. And these cubes were augmented reality when used with an app. Mm-hmm. And when you faced your phone at the different elements, and then they turned into an augmented reality cube where you could see the element and the material inside physically, or if it was a gas, or inside your little box, depending on what side you looked at. And we decided, okay, well, we need water. It's the hottest day of the year. How are we going to do this? And we started to look into, okay, what are the elements that we need to create water? Mm-hmm. And then from there, we had different groups working and seeing who could create it the fastest. And then when you put the different cubes together, and if you put the right cubes together, well, then you would see that water was created inside in these boxes. And then we shared that online. And it's a very, very simple thing. But what it does is it allows you to really see things in a different way, rather than just talking about them on a board or getting somebody else to show a YouTube video and talk about how it works, that you're actually doing it yourself. And that's something that I think will allow people to access things that maybe were never available before. We obviously couldn't create water in a normal classroom because, regulations and things like that. Obviously, we don't have elements and we don't have the scientific methods of doing things. But augmented reality allowed us to do that, and allowed us to have all these elements and put them together and mess around with them and see what happened. And even from that, we found other things and other elements that were created by the other groups who hadn't found water yet, and we created discussions around that. And I think that, for me, is very exciting when you see the opportunities of bringing things into the classroom that, even though they're not physically really there, that mm-hmm. you can it's exactly like it is there, and that's very exciting, because the potentials are massive. And I'm sure that you've seen that from Cleverbooks as well, to be able to bring things into the classroom that aren't actually there is a very exciting experience when you share that with educators and with students, and they see it for the first time.
Absolutely. And you did mention that both virtual and augmented reality are quite new technology and not widely used yet. So I do have to ask you then, on your opinion, what are the challenges to bring such immersive technologies to the classroom?
I think for any technologies, the challenge is to show the benefits and to really document the benefits in a data-driven world at the moment. So for me, this is something that I haven't done, and I'll hold my hands up, because I've moved a little bit away from the classroom in the last couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for a lot of educators, we get excited, and there's definitely a kind of an adrenaline surge to seeing students engage with these things and to really, get excited about them. But we really need to look at look beyond the excitement and the kind of the rush of these new technologies, and see, well, what is the actual impact that they're having from a learning perspective and educational perspective, and what can we show in data the benefits of it in terms of retention of information and results as well, because I think that's a big challenge at the moment in terms of young adults and teenagers. It is a results-driven educational system, which I don't particularly agree with in a lot of ways, but that is the way it is. So we do need to provide information to funders and things like that to say, well, look, we're bringing in this technology, we're going to spend this much money on it. This is why, and we can show them concrete things. So I think that there's a bit of work needs to be done around that, and I think maybe the sharing of that information would help educators to really put an argument forward for this, because we've all seen the benefits for it in our own individual classrooms, but we do need to be proving it in a kind of more scientific data driven way. And I think sometimes getting the principals and the heads of education in the different centres on board is a key to it as well. So there's a bit of a challenge around that, and I think that we see the best benefits and the best outcomes when those at the head of the organisations are engaged with these technologies and are supporting them, because it can be difficult for educators if they're battling against the people who are there, they have the answer to in these areas.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be a challenge. And then just again, the prices can be difficult. Is trying to find and source the right technology at the right price, because everybody is limited in what they can bring in terms of budgets. And within that, I think providing resources and online platforms to show educators some of the options that are out there, I think will be really, really useful. And I think encouraging social media use is always a positive within that, because you can see things in action and you can see how they've been working. So that's really exciting. But it would be nice to have a kind of a one-stop shop to have a look and see, okay, well, this is what's going on in the educational sphere in augmented reality, and these are the options in these areas, and these are the prices. And I think that'll be an interesting thing. It'll be a bit of a challenge to do, but not impossible.
Mm-hmm. And you were talking again a lot about the virtual and augmented reality, and obviously the challenges that are there now that the technology is immersive. But if you were to summarize the three main benefits for the educators, and also the children that those immersive technologies bring to the table, what would those be?
Okay, three for each. I think in terms of the students themselves, so if you're working with kids or with adults, I think one of the like for me, definitely anything that made a classroom more fun meant that I was more engaged. And I can only talk for myself in that, but I would see that one of the benefits for any student who's learning is that there's a fun aspect to these technologies. And that's one of the hardest things to bring into any classroom is a bit of fun. And that for me is one of the key benefits of this. And with fun, like we mentioned, it comes more engagement. And if we can create engagement for students, well, then that is obviously one of the biggest challenges for any educators. So we can we can see that as a benefit too. And then obviously another benefit would be the learning that you can get with these virtual reality and augmented reality technologies once they're used right. And I think they have to be used right. They're not something that you can just throw at a classroom and kind of hope for the best. And I think also for principals and technology innovators to be aware of is that, and for entrepreneurs too, is that it doesn't just matter about the product, and you might think you're providing something great, but there does need to be an element of training and support provided to educators so that they understand how to use the technology, but also for the students as well, that they understand too, so they can get the best out of it. And with that, if you can provide that, then you'll get those three benefits, so that you'll get that engagement, you'll get the learning, and you'll have fun while you're doing it. So I think that for me would sum it up for the students and for the educators and those who are teaching and using the technologies in the classroom. Well, one, it allows you to learn yourself. And I think that's one of the exciting parts, is that you're learning a new technology, you're learning how to implement it and integrate it in your classroom. So you're learning and you're developing your own skills as an educator, and you're starting to maybe push yourself outside your comfort zone, which I think is always a good place to be, and it's something that we should all aim to be in all of the time. So I would encourage that way. And I know sometimes it can be difficult to find the time and support, but definitely worthwhile while doing. And I think in terms of the relationship that you have with your students, if you're experiencing virtual reality and augmented reality, you're doing it and learning with your students, and you're in that environment and engaging with them. And I think that's, for me, a very exciting experience as an educator, is that when you're not just teaching but learning with them, and that's a huge benefit, and it's something that can build up relationships with your students, that when other topics and subjects come up, that there's this free flow of sharing of information. And as an educator, maybe you're not so afraid to say that maybe you don't know something, and your students can teach you. And I think that's one of the fun parts to it. And then obviously, again, it's fun. And I think that's exciting, but you're also going to get some really interesting results and learning and experiences from it. And hopefully you will get, with all these benefits combined, that you'll have good learning outcomes, which is always really the focus of most education societies at the moment, is that you want to show these outcomes. And I think that it's possible using these technologies for sure, once they're used correctly, and once you're given the right structure to use them and integrate them, and to learn about how to use them.
Right. Well, thank you very much. And you've named quite a lot of benefits for both the kids and the teachers. And we also spoken about that augmented and virtual reality are the future in education. It will come sooner or later. And then the question comes, what would be your opinion why the teachers may reject technology at the moment to use in the classroom, such as augmented or virtual reality?
Yeah, I think that some would reject it based on a lack of data around how it really improves learning and retention. I know that some perhaps would be focused on that and say, well, look, we can't spend our time learning how to use these technologies and integrating them without solid proof. So I think that's where having the correct data and research around it is very important. And then also, I think that some would reject it on the scale or the area of just not having the time, because as we know, a lot of educators are tight on time, and it takes a little bit of work to integrate any technology into a classroom, and it does disrupt a little bit, which to me is not always a bad thing. But I can understand where people are coming from when they struggle to find the time to do these things, when they have a lot of corrections and a lot of lesson plans and things to arrange and extracurricular activities that they're supporting kids in. So yeah, there's a few different reasons, I guess, but for me, as an educator, I always look at these things as an opportunity for myself to grow, and it might take a little bit of time, but in the long run, and looking at the kind of the long term goals of any educator and anyone who's in that area is that you want to be making sure that you're ready for the future. And like you said, it is the future, and it's how things are going, and we'll have this mixed reality that's going to come along, and we'll all be immersed in it. So learning about it now, I think, is important. We can't just close our eyes and hope that it goes away, because I think we need to have the skills in place that when it does become fully engaged and integrated into our education system, that we have the skills that we can really make the most use out of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, David, thank you very much for your experience and sharing your experience and also your opinion. And maybe you can also briefly say what your focus is now, and what your plans are.
Sure, yeah. I've moved a little bit away from the classroom, like I said, and what I've done is to start looking at how we can integrate assistive technologies and educational technologies into classrooms and into different centres that will support people with disabilities or with learning difficulties or with autism to live more independent lives, to be able to access education in a way that they want to and that suits them, and to be able to progress into further education or employment, which I think is a real key area of it. So at the moment, one of the things we're working on is creating smart rooms that will provide people with the ability to control TVs and lights and blinds and doors just through using their eyes, if they have limited or no use of their arms and legs and no vocal ability. So within that, then we'll start to hopefully build on it and see how we can really do that in a classroom setting, that will provide people with the ability to learn and engage with classes and with their peers, and be able to develop a path in education that they can make their own independent decisions in an efficient way and in a non-time consuming way, because sometimes those decisions and things can take a long time, and hopefully we're going to cut down these times between, over an hour. Like, you could spend the time trying to make a decision if you have no vocal ability and have limited use of your arms and legs. But if we bring in the technology that we're using in the Rehab Group, well, then you'll be able to make those decisions in a minute or so, or in seconds, depending on how that is. So obviously we've been looking at things like augmented reality and virtual reality to support and to build on these things too. So it's getting to an exciting level, and hopefully that we'll see some really interesting results and positive results coming out of it. And it's all about trying to give people options and allow them to be independent. And I think any technology, anyone doing things around that, it's only a positive thing. And we're learning. I'm learning. So I'm looking to get some support and to learn from other people who are working in these areas too. And I think that would be something that I would love out of this, is that people would hopefully reach out and share their experiences in these areas with me, and that we could learn and share together. And I think that would be really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Well, David, I wish you all the best and best of luck. It's a very important thing that you're doing. And I hope that you can also share with our listeners maybe the information so they can learn a little bit more about what you do, and maybe also can support you. So I'd appreciate if you can provide some information that we can put under this podcast.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. And you can follow me on Twitter at David Pollard IRL. And if you want to send me an email, it's david.pollard@rehab.ie.
Okay, we'll have all this information under this podcast interview, and very much appreciate your time, David. Thank you for being with us today.
No problem at all. It's an absolute pleasure, and I think you guys are doing some fantastic work.
Everything changes